think we're going to need to work on a musical episode of Between the Streams.
That's kind of my best skill.
Starring Ryan Juanita. I think, okay, next week.
Moonlighting as a writer.
Next week, Between the Streams theme with
Love
you.
it.
Okay, we're going to sing half of the article.
I just wrote a song for my friend's 40th birthday in which I make fun of him a lot, and it's probably my best work in some time.
You may get a sample at the end of the show. Hello, everyone. This is Between the Streams. This is our weekly podcast here from Digital Trends, where we talk about movies and entertainment and try to bring you up to date with everything that's going on in the world of that. There is so much that happens, and we try to keep you abreast of the news and the situation and everything that's happening. I know. I knew you'd have to say something when I brought that out. I know. I tried to class it up. That's what I get. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch, so we can take your comments and your questions. And we have so much to get to today. We just kind of want to roll right into it. I'm Greg Nibbler here with Mr.
Ryan Juanita.
Mr. Ryan Juanita, and we have a very special guest joining us for a short amount of time here today. We are really excited to have one of our amazing writers here for Digital Trends. It is Rick Marshall. Hello, Rick.
Hello. I like very special guests.
Very special guest, yeah. I added the very on. You know, I figured special guest, but I mean, I added the very on.
Hopefully
that was the right title.
Yeah, I mean,
didn't consult
that
with
might
Ryan.
be hyperbole. I think you're pretty much just special.
Okay.
It's a very special episode.
Well, that is the always cheerful Ryan Juanita
I
here.
kid. No, he's not
Digital
only
Trends.
very special, he's intensely special.
Intensely special. Well, Rick, thanks for joining us. So, before we get into all of our other topics today, I know we're on a little bit of a time limit. We're going to be talking about Game of Thrones later on. We've got some news about the Star Wars series, but there's two things in particular we want to talk with Rick about. One, you know, if you watch this show or if you're a fan of movies and entertainment, you know what a huge, huge effect and role Stan Lee had on our current entertainment world. I mean,
and will have for the foreseeable future.
Forever. Yeah. I mean, he's just the creator of so many different things, an amazing, amazing life. And Stan Lee passing away this week. I mean, it would be, remiss of us not to bring that up.
Oh, absolutely.
Here at the top of the show.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing to have Rick here, and we're going to have him do his review, a quick bit of his review for Fantastic Beasts, but he had a sort of special relationship with Stan, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, Rick.
Well, yeah, I've talked to Stan probably maybe a dozen, maybe 20 times over the years. We started conversing a long time back. I sort of oversee some projects he was doing that he was interviewed on. I would sort of sit on the phone and listen for a while and kind of get him prepped for the interview, that type of thing. And then later on, I actually started talking to him directly about a lot of things. I worked at MTV for a little while, and he would give me a call every now and then, and just out of the blue. And there was nothing quite like, getting a phone call and picking it up and hearing him say, "Rick, this is Stan Lee."
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is really cool. I didn't realize that you had that kind of relationship.
Yeah, it was interesting. He would give me a call every now and then when there was an issue, something happening in the news related to one of the characters that he was involved with or something he was in. And every now and then I just get a call because he wanted to kind of, set the record straight, kind of weigh in on something. And we would have a long conversation. We talked about things like Donald Glover possibly being cast as Spider-Man. We even talked about Twitter at one point because he was a very active Twitter user. We talked about social media and things like that. And I was always really impressed with both how aware of things he was or seemed to be, but also how much enthusiasm he had for a lot of his stuff. He was 80-something years old by the time I was talking to him, and yet he was still extremely active with social media and excited about it, and excited about the movies, and excited about the characters, and excited in the ways that like you and I are right now. And these are things that he's been talking about endlessly. This is a guy I mentioned in a column I wrote for our Digital Trends here, and how this is a guy who's essentially a band that's been playing, its most popular songs over and over and over again, and still gets a thrill out of them. And I think that's really, really cool.
That's really well put, and
yeah.
It's infectious. I don't think it hit me. He's an older guy, and I knew it was a big deal, but I don't think it hit me until the night of his passing, and I was watching Thor, and there Stan shows up with the haircut. He's about to give Thor the haircut, and that's when it really kind of knocked me back. How big a deal it really is.
Yeah,
he's gone.
Yeah, I mean, just such an influence on so many different things. I mean, I really hope, and I don't know if this was his wish or not. So if that's not his wish, great. But I hope they figure out a way to still get him in there for cameos. For shows going forward. No,
not so much.
You don't want that.
I don't want that, but I do sort of now in
I think
in
it
a
would
different
be
way, I
really-
sort of cherish like the interactions that he has and all those cameos.
But
I think his cameos are over as far as I'm concerned.
I think they should keep it going personally.
Well,
When whether that's having old footage or just even if it's an image of him or him in the back wall, or
I'd be
a cutout
I'd be
or
okay with
something.
that. Yeah,
But
That's what they
something
did.
needs to happen.
One of the Marvel Netflix shows, or one of the recent shows, they had a picture of Stan in the back on the back wall during something going on.
absolutely. Easter
Yeah.
eggs would be great. I'd be all for that.
That's what I'm talking about. I think it should
Gotcha.
continue, and they should absolutely have something in there for him
Totally
for each
agree.
time. All right, well let's go on. I know we need to continue on here, but if you have comments or questions about Stanley, please drop those into the chat, and that's really cool, Rick. Thanks for sharing that too. That story about him. That's really amazing. Let's talk about Fantastic Beasts. Fantastic Beasts out in the theater this weekend. You can go see it now. This is the second one in this series, and it's Fantastic Beasts 2. And Rick, you have seen it. Let's get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and real quick, just to preface that, I have a question just right off the bat. Is it looks like it's so cool, and everybody's seems to be like kind of bummed out about it. So, can you spoiler free sort of encapsulate like what's wrong here?
Well, there's a lot that it tries to pack into a very, very. I can't even say a short movie because I think it's over 2 hours. But
Right.
There's a lot that it tries to pack in there. I think that's owing a lot to J.K. Rowling has such an amazing imagination. She tries to put so much into this. She wrote the script for it, just like she did the predecessor. And she tries to pack so much into this movie. You'd be amazed after the movie is over thinking about, oh, that was only this many days and all that stuff happened. How did all that happen? The big issue with it is really that, for me at least, as someone who didn't read the Harry Potter books but watched all the movies, I have like sort of a knowledge that comes from that side of things. I was lost throughout all this. And it was surprising to me because the first movie was very good at being both a standalone film for people who might be newcomers to that mythology, but also having some stuff for people who are really hardcore Harry Potter fans. While this one was beautiful to look at, like the first one and many of the Harry Potter movies, but also just so steeped in its own lore and mythology. There were all these people around me wearing Hufflepuff scarves and things like that, who were just gasping at things and oohing and eyeing, and I had no idea why these things were important.
Wow.
A person would be introduced and say their name, and everyone in the theater would go nuts over it. And I didn't quite know why that person was important. Like, there are full character arcs that I don't quite understand why they're in it.
Okay, so that's really interesting because if you haven't read and reread The Deathly Hallows, the final book, which I am a super Harry Potter dork, then that totally makes sense because there is a ton of mythology. A lot of it is wand mythology, and a lot of it has to do with Dumbledore's relationship with Grindelwald and how that sort of was a big precursor to set up the whole thing for the Voldemort storyline that prevails throughout the books. So that makes a lot more sense, and that actually makes me more excited to see the movie, knowing that it's not going to be me that's going to be confused, and maybe I'll just enjoy it because I'm
Right.
a big dork.
Yeah.
So that's great actually for me.
I think
I
that
was
is
jealous of the people who were that excited
Right.
about it, to be honest, because I actually asked some friends afterwards, and my wife also. I kind of, without spoiling anything, asked her about a couple of things and a couple of characters that were introduced. And she's like, oh, that was introduced in one of the books, early in this book, but never made it into the Harry Potter movies, or this or that. And that was frustrating me because I actually wanted to have that same level of excitement that so many other people in the theater had. So I think you'll love it, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I mean, the movie, the movies all do a pretty good job because each movie gets more intricate as each book gets more intricate, and those who read the books know that this series sort of grew up with its readers. It started as a kid series and became almost a young adult to even adult series. So that makes a lot of sense. But there is a lot to unpack in those final 3 or 4 books, and so this is all coming around to me to make more sense that it's. That people are calling it a mess or saying it's too complicated. So now I kind of get an idea of that, and I think it'll be fine for me.
Really for the hardcore fan. And I'm seeing here Courtney in the chat. I'm assuming Courtney has read the books. She said, I'm super excited for the movie, but I guess I shouldn't take my husband. So it depends on who's read enough of them. I have not read the books, and I have seen most of the movies. So this would probably be something that I would be completely lost on. Yeah.
This felt like the 7th book. Or like the 7th movie. This felt like the 7th movie kind of jumping straight into it. And that was surprising because it didn't have the buildup of all the 6 before it that sort of helped people like me along.
Right. Huh, that is an interesting way to look at it.
Good to know, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess, that's why I've kind of always liked the Marvel movies, at least. I mean, you're not supposed to just jump into the middle of any of them, but at least you get just a little bit of an idea of who people are. Yeah, understand.
And the Marvels have their own tangents because each character gets their own sort of storyline. So if you're into that character and you jump in, you kind of the background. Oh, yeah. Iron Man has iron suits and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot in the Harry Potter lore, and it gets deeper and deeper. And she retcons things in as the books go on. So. Yep, that makes sense. But you did call it a beautiful mess, I believe. So at least it's pretty.
It was absolutely beautiful to look at. The first movie was beautiful, and this one's even more so. It really, like, the effects are amazing, the creatures are amazing, all these things are great. I didn't dislike the movie at all. I was just frustrated by parts that I didn't understand.
Yeah. So it's like the fantasy version of Inherent Vice, maybe, or
Possibly,
less psychedelic. I don't know.
Hey, I'll let you do that one. All right. Well, Rick, I know you got to get going here, but your review is up at digitaltrends.com right now. And as are many of your reviews, if you are a fan of entertainment, if you're watching the show, you must be. You got to read Rick's reviews. I mean, they really are great. You're honest about everything. And like this one, you're honest, like, hey, I didn't know what was going on.
Well, and like Stan Lee, he has an infectious love for all things movies. I think that's what you guys have in common.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. All right, that is Rick Marshall. They're from Digital Trends. You can check out all of his reviews at digitaltrends.com. All right, continuing on with the show, with Between the Streams. Like I said, we are live, so you can drop in your comments, your questions, whatever you want to bring up right there on whatever platform you are watching on. And let's see, let's talk. We've got one more thing from the weekend box office, but we'll get to that here in a minute. Let's talk about this other, well, there's several big news things that came out this week, but in particular, Game of Thrones. Anytime you hear anything Game of Thrones, people are freaking out.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the final season that's going to be coming. And HBO gave us a couple of things. One, a teaser trailer, but it really doesn't give us much of anything.
This is something that fans
kind of
could have
recap.
made. It's all old footage, and I was just really disappointed when I saw it, to be honest. I'm excited that we have a date. I think,
and this
maybe
came out from
date,
Game of Thrones, published on November 13th, so earlier this week.
But it seriously could have been a fan compilation made by DVD cuts, because it's all stuff we've seen before.
Well,
the final story. All the characters you knew. Like, yeah, I know.
Remember this guy?
I got it.
What about this lady?
Be something new, buddy.
Like dragons?
Do you like the dragons?
I mean, the thing is, though, they've been so secretive. Like, it's really secretive about just the plot line and the filming. And they had people out there to knock down drones in case drones flew over to get some of the footage. So I doubt they're going to really reveal much before this thing starts. And they probably don't even need to.
No,
people are going to watch
matter.
it. If you're into it, you're going to watch it.
That's what's, I think, disappointed, though. It's like, if you're going to put a teaser out, give us something. If not, like, you don't even need to put a teaser out. We're all going to watch, dude. You already have our money.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. It does stoke the flames a little bit. I'm sure people are getting a little bit excited. I don't mean to be, a total negative Nancy on this thing, but I would have liked a little bit more. But I am excited that we have a date, and I am excited to see this thing conclude. I just hope they can conclude it to make it at least satisfying. I'm not expecting a Disney ending by any means. In fact, I'm expecting probably the opposite of that. But I sure would like to be able to put the final stamp on this thing and say, well, that was a satisfying drama, just like I did with Breaking Bad and some of my other favorites.
I will tell you this, the chances of knocking it out of park with the ending are really slim.
It's going to be really hard for
Breaking
them to
Bad,
tie
like you
up
said,
this bow.
That was a good one, but can you think of another series like this that ended well? Sopranos. Look at how many people are mad at Sopranos.
Yeah, and actually people sort of get off on getting mad at series endings. It's never going to be enough for them. Seinfeld, I mean, it doesn't matter.
Lost.
It's never going to be enough for people, and they sort of are just waiting, in the bushes to pounce on, terrible ending, Right. But I think Breaking Bad is one of those that sort of broke that mold.
Breaking Bad, I'm rewatching Breaking Bad right now.
Season 5, maybe it's not your favorite, but it sure was a great conclusion.
It's great, yeah. A couple of questions coming in. So, one thing for the Game of Thrones side, so it's April 2019, which we kind of already knew they were going to be doing anyway.
I think we knew it was maybe even April. I can't remember now because it's been so long, but that's
been the most. There hasn't been another time that's been speculated other than April.
Yeah.
So it's like, thanks. Thanks, HBO. Raymond just asked, DT, is it true that Game of Thrones is the most pirated show online?
It certainly was
Yeah.
for many years running. I don't have the data.
Not sure if
lately,
it still is or not.
but it was multiple times, including most recently, I think, during season 5, and I think maybe even during season 6.
And HBO kind of made a statement on that they were just like, well,
They were proud of it.
yeah, that it's getting pirated, and because that meant people would be into it, and then they'd probably buy HBO, and they had a whole theory
T-shirts
behind
or
it.
whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
whatever it
They
is.
know
Buy
they're
the
going to make
DVDs
money
when they come out
no
because they
matter
want to get
what.
the quality versions.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. They weren't losing money by any means. So there we go. April 2019, Game of Thrones. That is when it's going to premiere. And of course, I'm going to watch it. And I just canceled HBO, and I'm going to resubscribe because I'm going to get it.
Well, and one quick little diversion here.
So that's so begrudgingly.
On
Yes.
the on the piracy thing, one thing that's been interesting because we've been yelling about how there's too many streaming services and they're becoming complicated and you can't get all the content that you want. One thing that's interesting that we've noticed recently is on the piracy front is that piracy is on the rise for the first time in many years, and you can sort of use piracy as a gauge as to how satisfied the general public is with the availability and affordability of your content. When Spotify started getting really big, piracy started going way down for music. And the same thing is true when Netflix started getting really big. We see piracy drops. And once we see piracy jumps, we can kind of use it as sort of a seismograph to say, okay, now streaming content is becoming either too expensive, too inaccessible, too bifurcated, whatever you want to say. But you can sort of look at that and be like, interesting. Now piracy is on the rise again. People are not happy.
I've never thought about it from that angle. I didn't, that you could, juxtapose those two things. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It's sort of a common, a known fact that, when you give people something that's relatively easy to access and relatively affordable, they would rather buy it than steal it. The majority, not everyone, obviously. So once they are stealing it more often, then something's wrong there.
Okay. All right. That is a great theory. Well, Game of Thrones, April 2019. And speaking of streaming, we need to talk about a bunch of other things streaming really quickly. I did want to just bring this up for the weekend box office other than Fantastic Beasts 2, which is what Rick was doing a review on. We do have this. There's a Vincent Van Gogh movie called At Eternity's Gate. Movie about him. Vincent Van Gogh did not write this movie.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I know. Sorry for any confusion on there. Starring Willem Dafoe. And it's once again kind of a take on Vincent Van Gogh. I mean, I like Willem Dafoe, so I like the idea of him playing. There's a lot of cameos that show up in there. I believe Diego Luna shows up, and what's his name? Madsen. Sorry, and this is my fault. I meant to write down the name. Of course, now I'm going through this. Anyway, Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads.
That's what I was going for. Yes.
We haven't seen Mads Mikkelsen in something for a while, so that's great.
Yeah, so Mads Mikkelsen's in there. This looks like a movie I will watch when it gets to Netflix.
So Van Gogh, I'm
going to watch it on Netflix.
Is he the ear guy, right?
He's the ear guy.
Did
yes.
he wrote poetry or something like that? Is that what it was?
He did a few things, but we'll go with the ear.
I kid, but I'll tell you one thing: the Vincent Van Gogh
He
Museum,
wrote movies.
The Vincent Van Gogh Museum is possibly. I did a semester in Europe, as you should if you're in college. And the Van Gogh Museum was possibly the most spectacular one I saw. This dude was, I don't know if you guys know about this guy, but he was a pretty good.
Have you seen this?
Painter.
Have you heard about this?
Have you seen this guy? But the other cool thing about Van Gogh is, he had a very odd personal life and everything. But the other cool thing about him is he was one of those painters that sort of spanned between, or one of those artists that spans between two genres. He sort of brought Impressionism into Expressionism, and he was one of those that sort of pushed it forward. So
wow,
it's pretty cool watching his artwork advance, let alone his really interesting life. So I guess
there we
it'll
go.
depend on how deep they get into it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like it's the movie for you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, well, there we go. So you can check that out. That's at theaters at Eternity's Gate. All right, let's move on back to the streaming talk here. So we all know Disney Plus is on its way. If you didn't know, it's going to be big. Disney Plus,
and
it's going
to be kind of
a big deal. And the way Disney's going to be organizing their new streaming service is kind of in 5 different platforms. You'll have, DreamWorks, Pixar.
Right.
You have Pixar, National Geographic, Star Wars, Disney Classic, and then Marvel movies. And for the Disney side, we already know there are 2 standalone series that are going to be out. 2 different standalone Star Wars series, one starring Diego Luna, which is based on his character in Rogue One, and the other one being The Mandalorian. And we now have our Mandalorian lead, which is Pedro Pascal. Pedro's
great choice.
Awesome.
Great choice.
Yeah, I love this. Like, if you, speaking of Game of Thrones, you know, the Viper, the Red Viper, but he is so great in everything. Pedro Pascal's one of those guys, like, no matter what he's in, I'll watch him.
Well, it's funny because Rick Marshall and I were just talking about this. Rick is not a Game of Thrones fan. He thinks it gets too violent, and he only watched the first couple episodes.
Yeah, Game of Thrones is not for you.
But he's been keeping up with it, and he said one of my favorite characters ever was Pedro Pascal, and you know what happened to him. So
you know what happened in.
Yeah.
I mean, in Game of Thrones,
not a good.
If you've never watched Game of Thrones,
Not to spoiler this one, but it's not a
assume
not a great exit for him.
Assume everybody dies horribly if you watch Game of Thrones.
That's a good.
You know that.
Good assumption.
Yeah, but Pedro Pascal is going to be the lead, so the lead role in The Mandalorian.
That really raises the excitement level for me.
Me too.
He's great.
Yeah. I mean, I'll watch him as a lead, and that's kind of brings me to my next topic too. So that's going to be on Disney+.
Because he was great in Narcos too.
Narcos, season 1 and season 2, they've already been out, and Pedro Pascal was one of the lead actors in that.
Yeah, that's an interesting mix because Diego is now.
And that's the thing. So Narcos season
Narcos.
3, it's called Narcos Mexico, is out now, and it's not really a sequel. They're saying it's kind of a spin-off of
Anthology
the original
sort of thing.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's technically tied together, but it's the same actors are not in it. However, this time we get to bring in Diego Luna and Michael Pena, another great actor. I like Michael Pena a lot, and so they are going to be taking the leads on this. Now, obviously, before they were dealing with the Colombian cartels and the Cali cartel and everything that was going on down there was the last season. So this one now spins off into Mexico. And talking about the Mexican cartels, there was a lot of trouble in even getting this thing filmed. I don't know if you remember, but when they were scouting for locations, one of the location scouts was basically executed by the cartel. So they took a lot of risks in making this series because it's getting, as they move closer in time to present day, you're starting to mess with people that are still around.
Yeah,
you know?
and
You're not dealing with Pablo Escobar stuff. These guys exist.
And not to mention, you're literally moving closer to home. So I think that this series also has that sort of compelling factor to it. Is that it's right on our doorstep, and it's going to be an interesting series. I had kind of forgotten that backstory. That is pretty intense. Yeah. So that gives, I guess, more reason to watch, and it's just very interesting.
I mean, I'll definitely watch it. I've said this before. I'm a sucker for anything dealing with drug cartels or gangster shows. I mean, I will absolutely. And you add in Diego Luna and Michael Pena. Yep. So that is out actually right now on Netflix. You can check that out. That's Narcos Mexico. Continuing on in the streaming battles, Apple is another company that we know. We've talked about it here on the show many times about how they're trying to get into the streaming world. They want to create their own content. They've tried before. I'm sorry, Battle of the Apps or whatever it was. War of the Apps. That was terrible. Planet of Apps.
We don't really have to know the name because nobody watched it.
I just want to reemphasize how terrible it was.
Agreed.
So Apple now, they've already invested $1 billion in content that they're going to be bringing to the forefront with some pretty big actors that they've got on board. Now they've signed a deal, and this is the most exciting deal I think they've done. They've signed a deal with Studio A24. And if you don't know who A24 is, they probably make some of the best movies that have come out in a long time, some of the really exciting movies that you've probably watched and didn't realize were A24.
Yeah, I mean, you might realize if you're into indies just because you'll see that symbol and it's sort of hard to forget. But yeah, they made so many good movies. I think Ex Machina might be my favorite of theirs, but
Ex Machina is great. Hereditary, one of the recent ones that just came out.
Right.
Moonlight,
that you might have heard of this little guy, Moonlight.
Seen this? We heard about this. It's our theme today. Lady Bird, which won a bunch of Oscars as well. I don't even know how many Oscars Moonlight and Lady Bird won, but a bunch.
Yeah.
And they really create some good content. So Apple signed a deal with them for original movies, and we're thinking maybe original series as well could be in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think the headline here is that Apple wants to get into movies because we knew they wanted to get into TV, but and it's sort of a natural progression for streaming services, but Netflix has been doing it. They just came out with their Buster Scruggs movie from a little group of indie filmmakers called the Coen Brothers. Yeah. Maybe you've heard of them. They're not very well known, but it's sort of the next step is getting into movies. And there's a sort of a asterisk to this, or also, and for Apple, it's like, oh well, we also have to make movies because Netflix is, and we got to get into this. So I guess we make movies now,
right?
But if you're gonna do that, A24 is a really killer way to get into.
That's the thing. Like,
great distributors, great. Just all of their movies are great.
Yeah. I mean, and that's absolutely it. Yeah, if you're gonna do it, well, okay, we'll take the best. We're Apple,
right?
We have the money.
Yeah, they just came out with Mid-90s, which is also getting great reviews. It's Jonah Hill's movies.
It's a great. I mean, they put out really, really good movies. I know we've said that over and over, but honestly, A24 is a great company, and good on Apple to partner with them. I mean, it's going to make their content more and more desirable to tune into. So there it is. Let's go to a couple of animated-ish ones, and I know, Ryan, this is more your territory for some of these.
Not this first one.
Not the first one,
This
but
one
nonetheless,
skipped me. Yeah.
this was trending very big this week. If you are into Pokemon or Pikachu, I don't know how this all works. Yeah, Pokemon, right? So it's a
Probably.
Pikachu movie. So Pikachu movie coming out May next year. We got a trailer for it. It basically seems like Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool as a Pikachu.
Yeah, I think the headline is Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds is the voice.
I'm telling everyone what the headlines are. It's Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan
But yeah,
Reynolds.
kids that grew up with Pikachu are probably going to be stoked on
Yep.
this.
Yep. I'm sure there's some people in the office right now who are watching this thinking I'm an idiot for not knowing this. But yeah,
that's how it goes.
Hey, I'm not a big Pokemon guy.
There's usually someone thinking that of us, so
Probably.
we'll take it.
I'll accept it in this stance.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the Pikachu movie coming out May 2019, excuse me, not in 2009. May 2019, Pikachu. You'll get that next year. The other one, this is kind of a big one, June 21st of 2019 is Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that this was happening.
Yep.
And I also kind of thought that Toy Story 3 was the perfect ending for this series.
Yep.
So
That's what a lot of people thought.
I was just like, oh, wow, this is so great. This is just a great trilogy and a great way to wrap it up. Nope, they're making another one. And in fact, it was supposed to come out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So now it's finally coming out, and we got a teaser that doesn't show much except one new character. I think that's the most exciting thing about this teaser.
Right, but for the most part, I mean, yeah, it's showing all the original characters back.
Yes.
You have all Woody and Buzz Lightyear and Jesse and all of that stuff, and the potato heads. But yeah, it's not a whole lot. It doesn't give us a whole ton on it, but this is the next one, and they did discuss, because Don Rickles is in it. We don't know how they're going to cover that.
Yeah, I don't
hadn't
think
voiced
he's
his
going,
role yet.
I don't think he's going to be in it, but there may be a chance that they.
But they show Mr. Potato Head.
They do show him, but he's not listed in the cast. So yeah, it's really going to be interesting how
okay.
so far anyway on IMDb he's not listed in the cast. But what they could do is go back and find old footage of stuff and figure out ways to work it into the script,
Or they're gonna have somebody else voice.
or just have somebody else.
Yeah,
do it.
I think it might just have somebody.
I
else
assume
voice.
someone else would voice it, but there's always the possibility of going back and finding old voice clips and adding
Or
them.
they use some kind of technology to use a voice mask.
Yeah, I think the voice is almost harder than the video right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. But yeah, the big thing about this teaser is the new character, as we talked about. It is Forky. He is a spork. He is a spork made into a toy, and he's very upset because he doesn't think he belongs with the toys. And that's what we know about Toy Story.
And there we go. And
Yeah.
that's what we know.
And he's very
about
cute
Toy
looking.
Story 4.
There
All
you
right.
go.
There it is. Let's go back to some more streaming news, talking about CBS All Access. And is anybody out there who's watching, are you a subscriber to CBS All Access? Did you subscribe for Star Trek? Because we have some Star Trek news here in a minute. This is the thing that could get me to subscribe, and it's Twilight Zone. The new Twilight Zone series, brought to you by Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is going to be the producer, one of the writers on it. That is what I would really... that makes me really interested. I'm a huge original Twilight Zone fan.
Yeah.
I've probably seen every episode, maybe more than once.
Right.
And the fact that they can bring it back, if it's well done, it could be really, really great.
Absolutely. Jordan Peele is a master of horror and a master of comedy, so we'll see if he is also a master of sci-fi.
Yep.
And I'm very excited for this. I haven't, there's nothing he's touched in recent years that I haven't quite enjoyed. So,
and we found out a little bit more about some of the cast. Kumail Nanjiani is going to be in it, which I think it'll be interesting to see how they bring in some of these people who you don't necessarily picture as being in Twilight Zone movies or Twilight Zone,
which is
episodes.
Exactly what Black Mirror does. So
right, yeah, that's true. Adam Scott also going to be in one. Which Adam Scott, that's another actor that I like him in about anything. So.
Adam Scott's fantastic.
Yeah.
For those who haven't seen Party Down, and we talk about it all the time, it's one of the best shows of all time. It was too good. They had to cancel it.
That's funny. We haven't even talked about it this week, but this is the third conversation I've had about Party Down.
It's just so good.
This week
and
alone.
if you've worked in catering, it's like you need to watch it after every shift.
Exactly what the person I talked to about this was said too.
But yeah, Adam Scott's fantastic, and it's funny because Black Mirror jumped off of Twilight Zone, and now the reboot is sort of jumping off of Black Mirror, getting these,
Yeah.
Twilight Zone did it originally, so you can't really even throw Black Mirror in there. But as far as I'm concerned, it's great to have more awesome sci-fi anthology series stuff. Like, I can't get enough of it.
Yep, I agree 100%. As long as it's good, yeah.
I just wish it was on Netflix instead of CBS, but
yeah.
other than that.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Electric Dreams, I don't think was as good as
Yeah, you know, I still
kinda
have
trailed
yet to
off.
check that one out.
I watched about 4 or 5 of them, and I love anthology sci-fi series, and that one just didn't quite grab me like the other.
You gave it a good shot if you watched that many. I've heard good things from some people, but I just haven't taken.
I mean, it's not terrible.
Yeah.
But it
it wasn't
doesn't
about-
have the Black Mirror magic.
Yeah, and
that
as
Black
we
Mirror
say on
has.
the show, there's so much TV out there that if it's not fantastic, I'm probably not going to watch the whole thing. I'll check out
True.
anything, but you just can't waste your time on something that's not blowing your socks off.
Which is what we try to do here. We'll
there's
give you
always
our
something else.
opinions, but we like to hear your opinions too. So send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com, or drop a comment in there. A few more things to get to here just before we go. One other thing for CBS All Access. If you're a Star Trek fan, especially Star Trek Discovery, there are some rumors going around that Michelle Yeoh is going to get her own spin-off series.
Yeah. And this is, at first you're like, well, interesting because she has a short-lived...
Yeah, and I didn't know this because I haven't watched the series, but it's, you know,
she has
it's
a
one of
short-lived
those things I
thing
can't...
on the original series.
Spoilers on me at this point.
Yeah.
It's my bad for not
On
watching.
Star Trek Discovery is where she comes to the Star Trek universe. But when you think about it, it really makes sense because CBS owns the rights to all Star Trek TV series, whereas I think it's Paramount owns the rights to all the Star Trek movies. But so what CBS is basically doing right here is what Disney's doing is you know, they're what Disney's doing with Star Wars is what CBS would like to do with Star Trek, is figure out as many ways as they can to, you know, expand this universe. And Star Trek kind of did it first. There's a lot of different Star Trek episodes. So they're just kind of continuing on with that. And that's what you can expect from major sci-fi franchises from here on out is a bunch of spin-offs.
Oh, you like this? There's a
keep
little bit
you
over here.
coming back to their
Oh, you didn't like that? Well, okay, we'll go this way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that
makes
is
sense.
how it is. I mean, but if the character's good, it seems like a lot of people
and as
are
long as
excited.
it's well written, I mean, why not?
So there we go. And we're going to circle back around to the top of the show here in just a second. But I did want to bring this to your attention. In speaking of franchises, you may have forgotten that this is actually a franchise.
Or you might not care anymore.
Maybe you don't care anymore. But nonetheless, announced yesterday, James Cameron announced it on his Instagram feed, I believe, or he put out a video about it. He announced that they have finished production on Avatar 2 and 3. Avatar 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So... if you didn't know, there are going to be a bunch of them, and if these 2 do well, there's 2 more after this. So there's supposed to be 5.
Is it 4 more or 5 more total? I thought
the last I read was if 2 and 3 do well, then they've got 4 and 5 ready to start filming.
Right.
And maybe there's more after that. I don't even remember.
You know, and I think Avatar gets a tough break. You know,
and
people
Avatar
just
was a good movie.
People just like say it's you know it's derivative and this and that, and I thought it's one of the only 3D movies ever worth seeing in a theater.
I agree with that.
Most movies that are 3D just don't do it right, and this one does. And whether or not the storyline is as compelling as can be is certainly up for debate. I thought it worked just fine. I mean, there's only 6 stories, as they say. They're all sort of derivative. I know that people thought this was more derivative than others, but man, was it a milestone in special effects. And also, I just don't ever count out James Cameron. I know that this has been a long time coming, and people are like, "Oh, what's taking so long? What's going on? Who cares about Avatar?" But man, every time he's got his back against the wall, and it's happened multiple times. Titanic, it happened. It's happened with the Terminator 2 movie was the most expensive movie of all time, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And these movies come out, and they are mind blowing and fantastic.
This boy,
yeah. So until he does me wrong, I'm going to say that Avatar 2 should be good.
You're a Cameronator.
I'm a Cameron guy. What are you going to do?
Hey, I'm a Cameron guy.
I'm a Cameron guy over here.
Well, as far as the actors back, Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, Kate Winslet, also in this one. So, and they filmed the second and third one. So they're done. The second one is going to come out December 18th, 2020. Third one, December 17th, 2021.
Yeah, they're done with principal photography for the main people. I'm sure there's other shooting and there's editing and such, but yeah, they're done with kind of the main shoot. And that's a pretty big milestone.
Right. The fact that he said, you know, production is done on that.
No, it's a big deal.
So.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
So there it is. So you'll be getting 2 more Avatar movies in 2 years. Another one in 2 years.
So hang on.
Another one in 3 years. So it's going to be a while. Well, there we go. So just kind of circling back to the top. If you missed it, we did have Rick Marshall on, and if you're listening to the podcast, clearly you've already listened to it, and that's a good reason to subscribe to the podcast. Right there.
I see what you
right
did
there.
there.
See, I tried. Fantastic beast to Rick hopping on the show to give us his review. We really do appreciate that, and we appreciate everybody tuning in to watch this show. It's fantastic. That was really great talking about Stan Lee at the beginning. The one thing I didn't get a chance to mention too is if you watch on Netflix, has a little bit of an Easter egg for Stan Lee. If you type in Excelsior, which is what Stan would always say, you'll get all the Marvel movies will pull up that are on there.
Yeah, and they're not going to be on that service for much longer, so it's probably a great reason to go ahead and jump in there and get back in and watch those movies.
Catch up now before you have to go get them all from Disney.
That's right.
So, yeah, there it is. The quote, finally, what does Excelsior mean? Upward and onward to greater glory. That's what I wish you whenever I finish tweeting Excelsior. That was from Stan Lee. So that was his post in 2010. So Stan Lee, yep.
And
one of the great ones.
He will be missed, but on the other side of it, he will have more touch on culture for longer than just about anybody I can think of.
Yeah. I mean, and he was, what, 93? I mean...
87, I think.
No, when he just passed away right now?
Well, I thought.
He was, let me just verify this. Right.
No, you're right. You're right. You were right. 87 was a different person that just passed away. We've had a lot of
94. 94. So
right.
Stan Lee, fantastic.
That's a good
life.
long. That's a good long while.
That's a good long while, and plenty of influence that he had. So,
yep.
All right. Well, there we go. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, this is Between the Streams. Send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com, live every Friday at noon Pacific. Not next Friday though. We will be off next Friday because it's Thanksgiving followed by the.
That's correct.
Black Friday. Yeah. Which we've got all kinds of reviews and guides up at digitaltrends.com for both Black Friday and the movies and television shows we've been talking about. Go there, check it out. Let us know what you're watching. Maybe we missed something. We would love to hear about it. And so you can always get a hold of us and leave a comment and an email and all of that. So I think that's it, Ryan.
Absolutely.
You said you were going to leave us out with a song, but...
I did, but I forgot my recorder.
Okay. All right. Well, next time, Ryan will close out with a song. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.